I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Spartacus Olson.
And with us is Ian Sowden in the background making things happen.
Hello.
And this is a live stream on the occasion that we are going to finally go on the road again after, well, a couple of years of not being able to. Like
19 years.
After 19 years. Is it 19 years?
This war it's a long war. Sometimes you think, oh, it's only been going on a few years. But man, you think, man, I remember this. Yeah, 1939 was 9 years ago.
Covering it in slow motion, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
No, but seriously, we're next week we're going to be in Alpbach at the forum there. We're going to do some interviews with some people. You'll see the effects of that later on in September. And then after that, on the 12th of September until the 18th, we are going to be in Normandy. And then we're going to have a short stint in late September at the Munich Oktoberfest.
Yes.
And at all those places, we are going to meet some of you. That's going to be very exciting. In about an hour, it's 21:26, I think. The auction for our one extra seat at our very internal Oktoberfest's luncheon afternoon of beer and fun and continuing into the evening with revelry of unprecedented nature together with Indy, myself, and the crew.
And let me hop in there. I don't know if you guys realize, you might think what I used to think Oktoberfest was until I was in Munich during Oktoberfest. I thought, in the States or in Sweden, like, oh, it's just a couple of weeks where everybody drinks a lot and that's a thing. No, it's a specific place at a specific time. And they build a city inside Munich. It's like a kilometer by a kilometer, most of a mile by a mile, something like that. And they build these massive, it spends months building it up, and it's just a field the rest of the year, right in the middle of the city. And in that city, you drink beer and you eat the world's best chicken. And since it's got, 3 million tourists in like two weeks or so, all of the companies that make the most modern, like free falls, roller coasters, amusement park rides, all premiere their stuff there. So it's also the world's newest and most modern amusement park. It's unbelievably fun. It's not just what I might have thought, 20 years ago, thinking, oh, this will be fun to meet the crew, but it'll be sitting in a bar eating and drinking. It's not. It's sitting in a beer hall with 5,000 of our closest friends while the Oompa band plays Lady Gaga and Don Ho, and you drink liters of 6% beer. And again, the world's best chicken. Trust me, they're rotisserie it for 24 hours at really low temperatures. Sparty, you turned me on to that.
Oh, totally.
And if you've never been to Oktoberfest, it's an absolutely unique experience on this earth. And since we work virtually, since Irina and Marek are in Poland, and Frankie and the gang is in the Netherlands, and I'm in Sweden, and Sparty and Astrid are there. This is when we get together. This is the company picnic, basically. Yep. And so somebody's going to join us at the company picnic, and we will even put you in lederhosen or dirndl if you don't have one. If you think, oh, I don't want to wear that, you will look stupid if you do not wear that. You can't go, if you wear just a t-shirt and jeans or something and go to Oktoberfest, everybody will look at you like, nerd. Well, they won't say Spartacus like your phone just did, but
I think I should turn off my phone.
I had to add that stuff. I don't think Oktoberfest is quite what people realize it is until they've been to Oktoberfest. Man, I'm looking at the Sparty speed right now, and I'm thinking best live stream ever. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
There. Right. Sound on my phone is off.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, Oktoberfest is, from a historical viewpoint, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, now over 200 years on, it's basically, it's a bachelor and bachelorette party that never ended, because that's what it is. It started as the wedding, like prenuptial party for Maximilian and Theresia of Bavaria, and the officers of the cavalry felt they needed to do something, so they organized a horse race. That was like, because Maximilian was, of course, a horse race man or a horseman. He was a cavalryist himself. And they organized that right on the training grounds of the cavalry. But then they thought, it can't just be a horse race. That's not going to be cool enough. So they invited a lot of like farmers and stuff to come in and do like kind of a rustic farmers market there. And it ended up being a 2-week party. Yeah. And it was loads of fun. And then Teresa and Maximilian got married. And then the next year they were like, should we do that again? They're not getting married. So what? Let's do it again anyway. And so they did. And the farmers market took off really well. And of course, already back then, the rides were there, not, of course, the electrical rides we have nowadays, but they had like, shooting targets and all kinds of things and throwing balls. And
they didn't have free fall though.
Yeah, they did not have free fall. They did not. But they did have Houden Lukas, which is, that when you take that's the German name for, I don't know what it's called in English actually. When you take a hammer, you have to hit it really hard and it goes up and you hit the
strong
bing,
thing. Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's called Houden Lukas and that's like, what every testosterone-filled male decides that he needs to try when he's at the Oktoberfest. I've actually managed to ding the bell once.
But I've done them before at several places, and it's not a question of strength. It's a question of balance. It's a question of working through the wrists and hitting and following through. Totally. I can ring the bell, right? It's yeah.
But I mean, they're set at Oktoberfest. They're set really harsh.
Okay.
You have to really get the right technique in and just slam it down. It helps to have sword fighting in your arms or baseball, I guess. We should do Houden Lukas this year, indeed.
Well, we'll film it.
Both of us, we could put our old. I can put my martial arts, and you can put your baseball technique to the test and see if we can ding the bell.
Cool. Okay. Tell them about the chicken. Why are you looking away? What's happened?
I don't know.
Everything's fine. The Zoom chat just isn't working, so I'm telling Indian Sparty to...
Okay, turn on Slack and turn off sounds. Okay.
Yeah, I can't turn off sounds, so I'm going to get a bunch of...
I can't turn off sounds either. Okay. What is our favorite or most interesting tank in the war? For you, the Panther, despite the mechanical issues? There's no way I can get past the mechanical issues, particularly as like this week, or the week that just finished, I've been writing the second half of September, 1943, and particularly when 4th Panzer Army has to cover the retreat to the Dnieper, and the Panthers really wrecking that because of the mechanical issues. They great prowess in the field, but they have to fly in by glider, like 85 Panther engines by glider, which is a waste of time and energy just to help cover the retreat, to prevent Soviet breakthroughs, because the Panthers are more of a liability than an asset in that case. And I think a favorite tank for me should be a tank that's not just, oh man, it's awesome in the field. Oh, well, it's a liability once you get it off the field. I still like T-34s. I like them dug into the road, like where it's just the turret, like above there. I can't say my favorite tank of the whole war because, I mean, I know the whole war, but I haven't done the, 60 hours a week of research on the last couple years of the war. And I know that's going to seriously affect how I feel about tanks of the war. It certainly did during the Great War. Ask me again in 1945. Well, I don't know when the war is going to end, but ask me again in 1945, and we'll see how I feel about that. But so far, I'll say T-34s, just because I like the all-purposeness of it.
I mean, in my case, it's an easy pick, and it has nothing to do with tanks, because per se, it's not a great tank. It's an iconic tank, but it's not a great tank. For me, it's the Sherman. It's just the Sherman, because that's... I think you've seen the photo in even. The first time I went to Normandy, when I was like 7 or 8, I was 8 years old. That was the day that I kind of got infatuated with World War II history. So that's a perfectly just, personal memory. That's the only reason I love the Sherman, because it's a sucky tank. But yeah.
Well, like me and the F1, the Renault F-117s from World War I. That was my favorite tank from the First World War because it's cute. But I didn't fight in the war. I don't know if I would have liked it if I was fighting in the war. But I've ridden in one. I've got to sit in the holster and put my head against the thing there and stuff. And it was surprisingly less uncomfortable than you would think it would be. It was not comfortable, but it was totally bearable. You could have sat there all day like that. But yeah. But I mean, yeah, the Panthers great offense, but if you have to glider in engines, one of my favorite tank.
I have to agree with you about the T-34 though. It's both iconic and of course, I mean, just the fact that it was not of course in battle indestructible, but in non-battle conditions, just all weather, all conditions, whatever it was, it functioned. Yep. It was there when they needed it, and that's a pretty amazing feat considering what.
Now, both you and I both have exactly the same favorite plane from World War II. Mosquito,
absolutely,
man, without a
doubt. The de Havilland Mosquito beats everything. And it's like, I almost, like this week I have to, or last weekend, this week, you two, both of us cover the Hydra raid. And tomorrow I'm recording, it's going to be the beginning of the Battle of Berlin. And the Mosquitoes don't do so good there. They do pretty, lousy because they drop targets in the wrong places and all of that. I love the planes so much that when I have to report on bad things they do, I feel bad. It's like, do I really have to tell this story? Because the Mosquito is so cool. I don't want to cast shade on that plane, but
one day when we have like $3 or $4 million extra, for our production budget, we can rebuild an actual proper Mosquito.
Oh, I would love that.
Three left in the world. Is that it? Is that right?
There's one that's still flying, and they're two complete in museums.
Which could be flying if they were broken out of those museums, is what you're saying.
Indeed. I
love the way we come up with our next project. So you guys are going to do a series on the Mosquito. Sure we are. Sure, a series on the Mosquito. We'll show it flying from museums. I got a question here. Doc Lank 3D says, will Drunk Indy be at Oktoberfest? He's a lot of fun. Probably be here in about an hour or so, but yeah, Drunk Indy will likely be there in Oktoberfest. Did I mention that they're 1 liter glasses of 6.5% beer? So yeah, Drunk Indy is a lot of fun. I'm willing to go there.
Sober Indy is also fun. I'm going to give you that today. Today, I'm going to give you that.
Thanks. I just made Bill Cosby eyes and then realized you shouldn't make Bill Cosby eyes. That's
doesn't do him very good nowadays.
Kind of a thing that people go, yeah, no. Oh, I read something interesting about the Buffalo Bills. I like the Buffalo Bills, the American football team, the Buffalo Bills. Now, in 1970, because of a missed touchdown pass in their final game, Bills lost, and they got the first overall draft pick, and they drafted O.J. Simpson out of USC as their first draft. He had a great career. He lived in Buffalo. That's where he met Nicole, his wife, and we know things didn't end so well for her, right? And what's his name? Rob Kardashian was got some fame as a lawyer for Simpson, and then of course his daughter had the sex tape. And then all the Kardashian stuff happened after that. So if the Bills had completed one pass in their final game in 1970, no Kardashians. Think about that. Thank you, Buffalo Bills, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also that whole trial thing that created the Kardashians, but yeah.
Yeah, but just saying. Okay, question for Indy or Sparty. What are our favorite events, moments we've covered while doing World War II? You want to start with that?
Well, I mean, it's a very small one for my side. I think the favorite event or occurrence that I covered so far in War Against Humanity, at least. I mean, there's a lot in your coverage that I've been infatuated with for years, but there's not much in my coverage that I've ever really enjoyed covering. But the one thing I did enjoy covering was the failure of the Germans to stop Polish young couples from having kids. that gave me a lot of mirth.
Yeah.
When they went out and tried to, they banned marriage, they did all kinds of things, and lo and behold, birth rates went up. Because they thought, if they can't marry, they can't have kids. That's how clever
That's a rather naive
Nazis
mindset, you know.
And that I enjoyed that very much. I think I walked around for a week smiling at it. I didn't know that before I did the research. When I did it, and also just reading the text of the SS, how they're lamenting this fact and they're going nuts about it. It was pure mirth. A whole week of pleasure for me.
I'm sorry, all the knocking. That's him probably sending me questions on Slack, which I can't do anything about the sound because I can't turn it off unless I turn it off. I wonder what my favorite thing that there's things I look forward to covering, but the Battle of Reunion Island, actually I really looked forward to that when I knew we were going to do that, because we don't do battles.
Yeah. That was a fun one, though. That was great. We had a lot of fun reading about that.
But because I had been reading about it like 5 or 6 months beforehand, and I was sitting with Sparty and Asher, and I'm like, we're going to do a special about the Battle of Reunion Island. And Sparty's like, we don't do specials on battles. I'm like, we're doing this one. We're doing this one. We're doing this one. And if you watch the special, then you realize we had to do that one. That was really fun. That was a lot of fun. So
cool. So I see that Mark Stenbergen is in the chat. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
We look forward to seeing you in Normandy. And I have to talk to you about the arrangements with hotels and stuff. So, but I'll get back to you on WhatsApp about that. But it's really cool that you're here. Always a pleasure to see you.
I got a very specific question from Remy Bien. Hey, Indy, are you happy the Astros are doing good and at the same time pissed off about Dusty Baker decisions? Yeah, like pulling Javier like 2 nights ago. Yeah, but yeah, I'm absolutely. I mean, come on, we won 21-5 last night. How can I not be happy about how the Astros are doing? I particularly like it because, during the Corona year, when Verlander and McCullers and all of our pitching staff was out, at one point of our 12 pitcher pitching staff, only one, Josh James, had more than 1 year of experience. And now all those young guys have like the best pitching staff in the AL. So this might be the best Astros team I've ever seen this year. So of course I'm happy about it. I question Dusty's decisions every day, but he's Dusty Baker, and we're going to win 105 games, and we're going to go to the ALCS, and we'll see about the series. So yeah, that was a very specific question though.
Okay. We have another one here from Mark Walsh. You've often expressed annoyance at people asking about China when nothing is going on over there, but what explains the relative lack of military activity there? Logistics, planning?
Well, plenty of stuff is going on. It bugs me, though, that people don't say, hey, you haven't talked about Norway in weeks. What's going on there? There's stuff going on in Norway as well, even though it's an occupation army. It's stalemate in China. Well, in May, we talked a lot about the Shipai Fortress and that whole offensive there, the Stalingrad of the East, which I had never heard of until I started researching Shipai Fortress, which tells you something about the war in China. But Japan doesn't have the resources to launch major offensives there anymore. I mean, they're on the defensive now, even in the Solomons and in New Guinea. In September, you'll see it's really on the defensive and losing a lot of territory, losing major territory. Now, you can't afford to suddenly start pumping in a major army offensive when what is the gain? What happens if, they send in a couple of Japanese armies and they're in Hubei province and they take 20 villages and they lose 30,000 guys. That's an overall loss in the war for them, considering that they have to hold Burma. They Burma's now declared independence. They have to still hold against the Americans and stuff, and the Allies. I mean, the Australians and New Zealanders there as well. So,
I mean, it's also easy to forget how huge China is and how long the war has been going on there. I mean, everybody's war tired on the Chinese side as well. If you just look at what was going on now in May when they did kind of reignite offensives there, Chiang Kai-shek had a real hard time getting the resources together to really break through, and the Americans are not in a position to give him the support, nor the British. None of the other allies are in the position to give them enough support to really take action from their side. So a combination of those two things lead to stalemate where not much is going on. And the other side is, of course, that the small things that are going on, even if they might be really, really important and really earth-shattering, they're very, very hard to know if they're true, if they're myth, or whatever it is. And there is nothing that has an impact outside of China going on for a long time. And then suddenly there is, and then there isn't for a long, and then there's suddenly
But I mean, the war is the war. Japan's not going to give up any of the ground it's taken, but the men it would cost to take more would be an overall loss at a position in the war when they cannot afford to lose men, basically.
Yeah. Here's another one from Zane Powers, a super chat question, and thank you for that. What was Philippe Pétain's perspective on turning France to the Nazis, as I don't see much discourse on that? Was he like Prince Paul, who had no choice, or was the betrayal more callous in nature? Oh boy.
It wasn't callous. You know, I got to admit, after all this time, I still like Pétain, because of his First World War service as well. Okay, you can't say he wasn't a patriot. You can say he was misguided in his ideas of what constitutes patriotism, right? I mean, obviously, I mean, through his service and stuff, he became a national hero and he became a national pariah with the collaboration. But I know that he collaborated for the simple reason that he thought that would save the lives and preserve as much of France as possible.
There's also a little bit of a
sorry.
Yeah, but there's also a little bit nastier side to it, and that is that Pétain was part of I mean, it's very hard to penetrate his personal opinions on this matter, but he was part of a group that had very, very anti-Semitic sympathies, and thus had some sympathy for the Nazis, not to the point of where he would have given up the country to the Nazis. That wasn't enough in and of itself. That was really what Indy just said, the whole effect of losing, and he felt that was the most patriotic thing to do. But with the anti-Semitic undercurrents in the group that he belonged to, it wasn't as inconceivable to work with the Nazis as it would have been for other nations that were occupied, like, for instance, Denmark. It gets complicated the further south you go. But if you take Denmark and Norway, where in Norway, of course, we had the Quislings, but the majority of the population was really, really hardcore against the Nazis, which you don't see in France. And I mean, in the last 30 years, there has been a real reckoning in French historiography about this as well, because, I mean, post-World War II, when I grew up in France, we suffered under what has been called résistantisme, which is everybody was part of the resistance, which is, of course, physically impossible. And considering that the resistance had about 500,000 people involved, and France had tens of millions of inhabitants, that story tells itself, sort of. But in the last 30 years, there's been a lot of reckoning. And one of the things that really has been spoken a lot about within that reckoning is the anti-Semitic sympathies within French nationalists, including Pétain, that led them to be able to hold their nose and still work with the Nazis. It's a very, very complicated issue at the end of the day.
It would be very one of those historical mysteries, maybe mysteries, so things that'll never be likely solved. Is, you know, what we've talked about Charles Hunziker. You know, Hunziker pulling the men back from Sedan, which was one of the major reasons for the breakthrough when they really didn't need to go back. And there's speculation that Hunziker was actually working with the Germans. There's no proof. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, like his leapfrogging plenty of people to be coming to power, him being the guy that's signing the armistice and stuff. I don't think we'll ever actually know definitely. I don't think we'll ever find papers that say, hey, I'm Charles Hunziker and I'm in the pay of the Nazis. But I think the question about Pétain is more pertinent regarding Hunziker, because that was more specifically why France fell, not a reaction to what to do after France falls. That's a real what if. That's one of those, if I could go back in history and learn something, that'd be like pretty much top of the list to learn what Hunziker actually had to do or not had to do with the Germans.
I'm totally with you on that one. So we have another super chat question here from Steve. What is your favorite World War II handgun?
I never thought of that before. My favorite World War II handgun.
I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, because I didn't know if it was...
I mean, I'm a total cliche on this one, but I'm a big fan of the Luger. It's just such an iconic gun, and it's such an odd gun, and I can't help but really. I mean, and it was of course the most sought after trophy once U.S. soldiers were on European ground and West European ground, simply for that reason, and I have to agree with that. I've never actually shot a Luger. I would have liked to do that. I've shot a bunch of other guns, but I've never shot a Luger. I would have really. It's one of those things. It's not on my bucket list in any way, but if I have the opportunity, I would very much like to try.
When I came to Sweden and started playing with Swedish bands, and then was with Money Brother, and we got big and all. Our the booking and promotion company we were with was Luger. They were the biggest rock punk booking company in Sweden, like the Hives and stuff were with them, and like Mando Dio and stuff. We were all in the same. Their offices were just down the street from my house. I could go get beer there. It was I'm dodging the question because I don't actually have an answer. I'm trying to think what my answer would be, and I don't. I'll get back to you on that because I don't want to say something I'm going to regret.
Okay, here's a funny one for you, Indy. Also, super chat from SKHS Video Production. What ship has the most amazing story from the war, and why is it the Enterprise?
By the war, I'm guessing they mean World War II.
I would assume yes.
Shame, because things like World War I had like Merva and stuff. Enterprise has a really good story. But we did the Cormorant and stuff, and that's a pretty good story too. That's a heck of a story. The Enterprise has the best story of the war. Fine. Although aircraft carriers were not even classified as capital ships till 1942. True story. I think we've all learned something today. Actually, I think everybody knew that because I've said it like 5 times in the regular episodes before that. I'd say the Cormoran in terms of general ships, because I like the tales of swashbuckling adventure on the high seas. And Enterprise, sure, it's swashbuckling adventure, but it's an aircraft carrier, and it's too big for swashbuckling adventure. You see what I mean, right?
Totally. I mean, I'll go with you with the Cormoran any day, because the story is just fantastic, and it goes on. I mean, it was just recently found, both wrecks, and there's a lot. I mean, it is swashbuckling. I mean, it's back to pirate days. It's good stuff. It's very tragic as well, of course, because a lot of people died.
And this is not my favorite ship of the war, but a ship I definitely should cover when I get to it and learn more about. When we did a special on Guam in the Great War, and the Guam Tourist Bureau sponsored us to do that, and I was like, okay, Guam. This is when I was writing the Great War, and I didn't know anything that happened on Guam there, and it's a quite interesting special. Guam had an interesting Great War story, but there was a ship that was sunk in the harbor there, and during the Second World War there was another ship that was sunk right next to it, so you can scuba down and you can look at the World War I ship and the World War II ship together, and so I hear what you're thinking, Spar. You're thinking, when we get some money and we go to Guam. Yeah. I know.
You read my mind, didn't you? You read my mind.
Because we're definitely doing that scuba thing there.
So from Alex Ammerling, hi Alex, another super chat question. What is your favorite World War II movie? For me, it is Das Boot.
I think probably Tora. Yeah.
Tora.
For me.
I tend to go with you.
That's really good.
I mean, I have a very
in terms of film, that's one of the greatest films ever. Sure, no question about that. But Tora, I like I mean, the accuracy, the timelessness. It doesn't matter that it was made 50 years ago. It could be made exactly like that right now, and it'd still be a good movie. Does it who cares about special effects or anything? It'd still be that good, you know.
We had a lot of fun.
What?
We had a lot of fun looking at that.
I thought Ian said something. I thought Ian said something.
Oh, I did. I just wanted to interrupt and say Downfall is definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen, and especially when it comes to
Ian says Downfall. Okay. So, but we had a lot of fun. What about Tora Tora Tora?
We had a lot of fun watching Tora 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 when we wrote Pearl Harbor, because it's so fun to watch a movie where they get so much stuff right, and we were comparing it to our script.
Even bother guessing and be like, "Come on, that's amazing! It's amazing."
Yeah, little things, like even that car is the right model car, and you just go like, "That is so amazing." I love that the focus on detail. I don't know if television series count, but I started researching the war against humanity when I was 10 years old, because I watched the television series with James Woods and Meryl Streep, The Holocaust, and it still holds up to this day as one of the most heart-rending and terrifying documents on the whole Shoah, and that really is up there.
Wait, talk for a second, because there's something I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, well, I can talk about that, but I don't. Yeah, I don't think.
Oh yeah, this is what I was trying. You know, I went to Wesleyan University, and at my 30th reunion in 2019, I did a little talk about. It was a talk about war presented through documentaries, because I started this and was doing the Great War. And Bruce McKenna, who wrote The Pacific and was one of the main writers on Band of the Brothers, we did it together because he graduated in '84, so he was 5 years ahead of me. It's 5 years. And Band of Brothers is great. But The Pacific, the first time I saw it, I didn't think it was as good. And then the second time I saw it, I thought it was a lot better, because I knew much more about the Pacific War, having done a lot of research from that. If you watch our series and then watch The Pacific, then that's for TV series. That's it.
It's good. I think both of them are really good, both installments of that. So, for those of you who are joining us a little later than in the beginning, we're here today because we're going on the road. We're going to be in Alpbach in Austria next week, doing some interviews with people that you're going to see in September, and we're going to be in Normandy shooting for our big D-Day extravaganza that's coming out next year. And we are going to be at Oktoberfest, where tonight we are auctioning off an extra spare seat at our internal team event, where you have the opportunity to see Drunk Indy, Drunk Francis, and maybe even a little bit Drunk Sparty, which is a rare thing these days, at least.
You get to see Naked
and yeah, that auction is ending at 21:26. So if you want to come join us, it's worth even the hefty price out there. It's the Oktoberfest this year is very, very difficult to get into, because it was canceled now for 2 years in a row because of Corona, which is actually the second time in history that it's canceled because of disease. It was canceled during an outbreak of cholera as well in Munich back in the early 20th century. Therefore there's a lot of lot of people just champing at the bit to get in. So it was almost impossible for us to get seats and get a table, but we did get a table, and we do have an extra seat, and that one is up for grabs tonight on the auction. Link is in the description, right, Ian?
Yeah.
There you go.
Which beer hall are we at?
Yeah, and when we go to Normandy, we're going to meet. You have the opportunity to meet us during one fan event, and you have an opportunity to go to dinner with us. There's also a dinner in Munich, not an Oktoberfest dinner, but a dinner out here in the countryside where we record everything in Benreid. Yeah, and while we're in Normandy, we're also going to be hanging out with many of our brigadiers that are flying in from all over the world, and we're very, very happy to see them. Our brigadiers, that's the tier who go far beyond the expectable, and support us every month with substantial amount as their membership fees in the TimeGhost Army. And it is the TimeGhost Army and the members and their participation that enables everything we do. But the brigadiers go far beyond the expected. And therefore, we're going to be joining some of them. I know that Mark is here in the chat. I hope that some of you other brigadiers are. I mean, we see each other every day in the WhatsApp group, many of us. So it's always a great pleasure. They are the heart of the TimeGhost Army. And so
just so you know, what I'm focusing on is you used the word expectable, beyond what's expectable, and I just kept thinking, does that count as a word? I mean, it is a word. That's the great thing about the English language, is you can make up a word, and 2 weeks later, it's in like dictionaries and lexicons. Like I Hotzendorf this, I could order that and stuff. It's beyond what's expectable. Sure, that makes sense. But hey, which beer hall are we in at Oktoberfest? Do you know which one? Beer halls at Oktoberfest.
We're going to be in Augustiner.
Ah, cool.
Which is a great beer hall, a very, very traditional, but still not. I mean, it's rowdy enough to still be fun, but it's traditional enough to not be annoying.
Yeah, but
because
it's also
like Hofbrauhaus can get really annoying. That's just too much rowdiness.
An Augustiner Helle for everyone out there. That's my favorite of the Bavarian beers too. So that's quite good. Hey, I got to answer a question that I missed. Somebody wrote back. What's his name? Oh yeah, Oliver Sherman too wrote. Hey Andy, have you learned much Swedish during your time in Sweden? I'm half Swedish and I visit Värmland regularly. Of course I learned Swedish. I'm gonna live somewhere for 25 years and not learn the language. Så ja, jag kan ju svenska för fan. Spari, du kan ju svenska också, eller hur?
Ja, vi kan prata lite svenska. Kan vi ha en svensk hörna här på
Men vi kunde göra hela livestreamen på svenska, eller hur?
Det skulle vi kunna göra. Det blir väldigt jobbigt för de som inte pratar svenska.
Ja, men det blir det då också. Han skulle ha ingen aning om vi sa fel eller sa men han ska knulla sig själv i röven eller någonting. Han vet inte, jag sa något dåligt där.
Man skulle kunna säga sådana saker. Men fördelen också att de kan inte riktigt, vi kan säga precis vad som helst om kriget. Vi skulle ju kunna bara hitta på grejer och ingen aning om vad vi ljuger.
Nej, gör inte det. Okay, yes, we speak Swedish. Yeah. But I have a Swedish passport as well now. I have both Swedish and American passports. So hey, you know what we should tell them about? We should tell them about Outback, yeah?
Yeah. Well, what do you want to tell them about Outback?
I thought we'd tell them about our upcoming plans and things that might be interesting for them to know. And that one you're more on top of than I am.
Sure. So
plans.
We've over the big plans. They are actually over the last year. We've been searching for ways to really integrate the TimeGhost main channel into what we do. We've tried a lot of things. We've done into context and. But we haven't been able to do like a really long-term series like we did with Between Two Wars. And looking towards at some point, World War II is going to end. And at the end of the day, one of the big questions that we're fighting about during that war is democracy versus authoritarianism. And as I pointed out in War Against Humanity this past weekend, that battle is not a battle of Axis versus Allied because there are undemocratic forces on both sides. And so that struggle kind of goes on beyond the war. And it's a struggle that today, obviously, with the situation in Ukraine and what's happened in India and a lot of other places around the world, and here in Europe and in America as well, is far from over. So what we wanted to do is to go in and look at actually the history of democracy from the perspective of revolutionary changes, so revolutions. And to get that set off, this year at the Outback Forum, they have the future of democracy is one of their main themes. The Outback Forum is a really interesting institution. It was founded by Austrian student resistance members in 1945, right after the war. They got together in a small village. They happened to be from that village, these two guys. And they got together in the village of Outback, which is considered Austria's most beautiful village. And it's got a prize for most beautiful flower village of Europe. and they got together there in August of 1945 to discuss the future of Austria from a student's perspective and what they could do in order to increase the chances for stable democracy. Now, Innsbruck had given up without a fight, partly because they and a lot of other people in the administration at Innsbruck had paved the way for an Allied takeover. And it became a French protectorate during occupation. And the French general who was in charge of, he was the governor of the Innsbruck area, he happened to be, well, they invited him and he came up and he was at this event and he thought it was so cool that the next year he decided to get the Allied powers behind it, the Western Allied powers behind it, and expand it a little bit and give them some money. And they started what became the European Forum Alpbach. And the European Forum Alpbach has been going on since then. Indira Gandhi has been there, Madeleine Albright. This year it's the Prime Minister of Albania's there, Carl Bildt, the Swedish PM who brokered a lot of peace talks in the Middle East. And Indy and Ian and Francis and I will be going there, and we will be interviewing some of the people who are there to talk about their perspective of the future of democracy, so that we can use that and talk a little bit about the history of democracy and revolutions. So that's really what we're doing in Alpbach, trying to get that into a hard kick, to hard kickoff, and program will start coming out in November. The interviews on the TimeGhost channel already in September, but the real program starts in November.
I think it's exciting for people to hear what our other TimeGhost projects and plans and things for the future is. And yes, every now and then there'll be more dictionary episodes, because even though the dictionary costs more money to produce than it earns, I'm still determined to finish the alphabet at least the first time through, so we can make the book, the dictionary book. So we finished. M was the last one, mathematics. So
yeah, I look forward to that. I like those a lot. They're a lot of fun. We got a thank you in Swedish from Björn Värvågen. Björn Värvågen. Tack för allt fantastiskt innehåll, and he donated 500 Swedish crowns.
All right,
tack
cool.
för det, Björn. Tack för det.
For those of you who don't know what crowns to euros or dollars, 500 Swedish crowns is 10 million euros. So I think we can end this stream now, basically. Sparty, I'll see you and Ian in like an hour and a half. I'm thinking Brazil. I don't know. What do you guys? Brazil's nice this time of year.
Yeah. We have a question. I think this is, I don't know quite what to say about this, but it's a super chat question from King Eric the Great of all. And he asks in German, werdet ihr irgendwann eine besondere Episode auf Rudi Vrba machen? Mein Vater traf ihn, weil die beide an die University of British Columbia lehrten. Sie blieben Freunde bis Rudis Tod in 2006. So basically, I'll translate that. Are you at any point going to do a special episode about Rudi Vrba? Vrba. My father met him before, when they were both studying at the University of British Columbia, and they stayed friends until Rudi's death in 2006.
Well, we stopped doing galleries and specials on bios because, again, unfortunately, I like doing bios and I like doing the galleries, but they performed poorly enough that we had to use resources elsewhere. So on just a practical point, at the moment, no, because we're not doing bios and specials. Go ahead, Sparty, and say what you were going to say.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. So we're in perfect agreement. Mark Stenbergen, again, our good friend and brigadier, asks, do you have a favorite museum in the TimeGhost headquarters area? Well. That is without a doubt the Deutsche Museum. The
Absolutely.
Deutsche Museum is I think you'll agree with me there, Andy, right?
And I got one word for you about the Deutsche Museum: Dorniers.
Yes.
The Dorniers.
It's a little bit sad that they moved out all of the airplanes out to Schleißheim,
Yeah.
because it was better when they were in the main hall inside of Munich. But it's still, I mean, and now there are 3 museums. I mean, it is the traditional one, which is awesome in and of itself. And then it's the really, really cool automotive museum up on right above Wiesn, actually, where Oktoberfest is. And they've moved all the airplanes out to an old airport in Schleißheim, which is pretty damn cool as well.
I haven't been out there since they moved the airport. I love seeing the Dorniers and some of those planes. Like you can tell it's Art Deco time when design trumps everything. You're like, this is a gorgeous plane, but it's a really stupid plane. How do the guys from this cabin get into this cabin when they're separate? I mean, I understand the cabin service is fantastic, but it's I mean, it's amazing to take. It's the Deutsche Museum, the technology. I like technical museums in general, although they're not my favorite museums. But this is, yeah, the Deutsche Museum is it really is technical stuff you want to see. Totally.
And it's so huge. I mean, you can easily spend a whole day there without, like, getting bored. It's just, and I mean, they have everything from the first digital computers, the Z1, to a V2 rocket, a whole reenactment, or a whole, like, it's not a diorama. It's actually a full size, which dates back to the beginning of the museum when Bismarck and I forget what it's called. The guy,
I don't know who made the
Bavarian architect who founded it. They built a whole. I mean, you've been down there with me, where they recreated mining.
Yeah, I was going to say the coal mine is awesome. The mining is amazing. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anybody going to Munich, you got to go to the Deutsche Museum. Now it's museum.
Yeah, I think that's it. Here's a question for you. I mean, my answer is quick because it's there isn't any. But it's a super chat from the B Night 3. What foods have you not tried at Oktoberfest? And my answer is there is no such thing as a food I have not tried at Oktoberfest.
Pretty certain I'm with you there. I mean, the foods you get in the beer hall, you get the Schweinshaxe, you get the chicken. That's what you get.
You eat it all.
So some, yeah. But when you're
and there's the dumpling stand, Indy. Did you ever go to the dumpling stand?
I don't know if I ever went to the dumpling stand. I was going to say the stands outside. You get all you get the pretzels and you get the big heart things and stuff. But I've eaten all those.
Yeah, but this year we have to go to the dumpling stand. It's quite amazing. They have like 17 different forms of dumplings.
What's the name of this guy? Who's the super chat guy that just asked this question? They was from the Bleed Night 3. I'm guessing that's the Black Knight 3. Well, thanks to you, I get to go to the dumpling stand this year at Oktoberfest, and you can be with us if you do it on October 1st, and you'll get your dumplings for free. We can buy like all 17 kinds of dumplings, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We will never walk again.
Fun fact about dumplings and Nidell. My grandfather, Harry Nidell, made up the last name Nidell, right? Now he was born in what was the Russian Empire, and his family came to New York in the early part of the century, and his name was Harry, but his last name was Knedler, which is somebody that makes dumplings. So apparently somebody in my past made great dumplings, and Harry Knedler became one of the world's great violinists in the 1930s. He played with the New York Symphony. He played with a lot of Broadway musicals. I got these great photos of him with all these stars from the 30s and 40s. And he was a little guy too. Good looking little guy. Better looking than me, but shorter, basically. Think it through that way. But his friends all said, Harry Knedler, if you're going to become really famous, Harry Knedler, it's the 30s. It sounds like too Jewish and stuff. You need to make a more mainstream name. So he changed his name to Harry Needle, like needle and thread. And then his friends said, well, that's just stupid. So then he changed his name again and changed it to Nidell. And we found out when he died in 1991, 90 or 91. And my grandmother, Eva, his wife, she lived until 1999. And we found out after she died that she had changed her name the first time from Eva Knedler to Needle, but she didn't bother doing it the second time. So she was still legally Eva Needle when she died. So, but the point of the story is somebody in my family going way back was really good at making dumplings.
There you go.
I'll get my quote.
So we have. I got a question here, and that's where I got this cool pipe from. What's a vape pipe? I don't think I'm allowed to do commercials for pipes, and I've paid for this, so it's not commercial. It's actually made by a French mod maker who Indies and my very good friend Chris turned me on to, who sits in the south of France, and he does these. So it's got the battery in here, it's got the vape part up there, and yeah, I enjoy it very much. It's my second brain.
Where do you put the crack in?
Sorry, Indy, you broke up there.
So where do you put the crack in?
Yeah, exactly. It's crack.
Just put it right in the bowl there. Oh, somebody posted about, we're talking about war movies. They posted Where Eagles Dare and Force 10 from Navarone. You can include the Guns of Navarone as well. Anything Alistair MacLean wrote about World War II and that was made into a film. Where Eagles Dare, though, come on. I mean, Clint Eastwood was so young in that. It was Richard Burton. Yeah. That's a classic. Where Eagles Dare is really.
It is, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Guns of Navarone too. The book, it comes the little twist with the woman comes as more of a surprise in the book than it does in the movie, but still, no, I'm totally with you. Absolutely top 5 material, and yeah, Kelly's Heroes as well too, just because of the characters, you know.
Yeah.
Donald.
I think we're having some connections issues on our end, Ian, because you've got video on as well. Maybe you can turn off your video.
Off, but,
yeah.
Chat, let us know if you're having any problems, but you haven't complained so far.
Okay. So, how is the auction doing anyway? Is it up to
so
$1 million?
There are no bids, which means that you can get the ticket at the bargain discount of €500.
For a handshake. Yeah. But you have to be...
That sounds like a lot of money, but you have to know that a large portion of that actually goes towards paying the ticket for whoever's get the seat. Because this year is really, really difficult to get a seat at Oktoberfest.
Yeah. You probably pay that much money to get a ticket anyway.
No, you can't get any seat at the Oktoberfest anymore, so, you know. Yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I remember my first Oktoberfest was 2004. When Anna was like 12 years old, and we went on that ride. Whoa, that's still the scariest ride I've ever been on. Man, I just says some people don't like roller coasters and free falls and things. I'm good at convincing myself they wouldn't let me on it if I was gonna die. So those are the scarier the ride, the better the ride, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But I'm a cautious driver and stuff. Sparty, on the other hand, is a demon driver. I use my imaginary brake pedal all the time when I'm with Sparty, and my imaginary steering wheel as well. But he's not allowed to go on these rides because he's too tall. That's the sad thing.
I know. But that's why I get to drive the roller coaster of the Autobahn.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh. Hey, I was very nice with you and Emily when we drove to Alpbach recently. That could have been a roller coaster ride.
That's true. That's true.
You know that road. There was a funny story. I'll tell you the details of it. But Argos got lost in the middle of the night, and I was in Alpbach, and I had to drive back to help Astrid find him. It's a funny story. I'm not going to tell it now. It's too long. But in any case, I really needed to get back fast, so I drove from Alpbach to Benreid in 1 hour and 15 minutes, which means that I was doing 150 kilometers an hour on some of the mountain roads there.
Yeah. Wow.
That was very, 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 very scary, actually.
Peering into the future, I can see that I'm going to be hosting War Against Humanity quite soon.
Well, we've changed the organization here. Argos isn't going to get lost anymore.
Well, funny you mentioned Emily and stuff. Remember when she and I were getting her first trip down to Bavaria with me, we were driving from the airport, remember, and it was pouring rain. And you and I were driving, and that Porsche in front of us, like, skidded and spun sideways and wrecked on the road in front of us. right? And your first thought is, I hope the guy's okay. You can see the guy using his cell phone in the car, and the second thought is, well, his tire has fallen off and it's next to the car. It'd be really funny if I ran over like I was going to help and just rolled his tire away. And I think he'd see the humor in that eventually, right? If it was you, you'd see the humor. If you were sitting in the car like, oh, here comes help. He's stealing my tire. Come on, you'd see the humor. Right? You guys in the chat.
That was actually one of the moments where we're having driven like thousands and thousands and thousands, or hundreds of thousands of kilometers in my life, came to really, really good use.
Yeah, we could have been.
It was almost like somebody took control of my body, and I was just doing everything automatically, pumping the brakes and slowing down, and that was close though. That was scary.
It was close. It was it's since it worked out very well for all concerned. It was a good situation and stuff. And of course, my third thought, after is he okay and do we steal his tire, is to get out and go see. But of course, we're on the highway and I shouldn't do that. You guys were the voice of reason there. So, yeah. Well.
Yeah, well, there were people helping him. It turned out. I mean, I think the biggest loser on that day was probably the insurance company. I don't want to think about that. Yeah. So,
oh, and speaking of Emily, my wife, who I married last month on July 16th, as of today, her last name is Nidell. So, so Emily is Emily.
Congratulations, Emily. You know we love you.
I think she's out on the balcony with the cats drinking.
Oh, there you go. You let your cats drink, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
that makes things so much easier.
Different folks, different strokes.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
So we have a super chat question from Mistress Melissa, and this is an interesting one. We can devolve some of our sleeping issues. So how intense, stressful is the work for the channel lately, and your quality duration of sleep? Asking as a sleep researcher. I hope all are doing fine and get enough rest between all amazing videos. I'll go first on that one. Well, Melissa, right now I'm not getting as much sleep as I would like, but it's quite stressful. I mean, War Against Humanity is not easy work, as you can imagine, but I've been doing that for 40 years, so I can cope with it. I do get nightmares from it sometimes. If I spend, when I have to work late and have to write late, and it's very grueling, I do get nightmares. Now, the thing is, I was blessed, and my parents were cursed with a child that doesn't need much sleep. So already when I was only a few months old, I was only sleeping 8 hours a day, and they took me, I mean, this is back in the 60s, late 60s, so there wasn't that much research. But in Sweden, there's a Karolinska hospital, and we were living in Sweden at the time. And they took me there, and they put me in a sleep laboratory, and they researched everything. They looked at me. They did like all the tests they could. And the doctor then said to my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Olsen, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that there's nothing wrong with your son. The bad news is that he doesn't need much sleep. So just get ready for some very short nights. And it's been like that since. I mean, I've with age, I've started sleeping more. So now I sleep like 6-7 hours a night. And I always take a nap in the afternoon, like 20 minutes, short naps. But I just don't need much sleep. That's how it is.
Well, talk about the work first and then the sleep issues second. I did a lot of extra work in May and June so I could film up to the week of September 10th, 1943, so I could take the entire month of July off to deal with the wedding and all the stuff that comes with the wedding and the post-wedding things and stuff. So I didn't start working again.
Post-wedding things, Eddie? You want to expand on that?
No. Nobody's business but my own.
Do they involve sleeping?
Started coming back to work August 1st, and yes, it's been quite an intense work. But the only things that have taken more time then the spread, the war gets bigger and stuff. But it's getting back in, because you get used to doing it 52 weeks a year. I've never taken a month off from, not during the Great War, not during this, maybe a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days, but never more than even a week and stuff. And getting back in the rhythm of the production rhythm. And the first do this, because I still write the regular episodes by myself, and I will continue to do that until it's not possible to do, or they drag the computer out of my cold, lifeless hands. One or the other. But as for sleeping things, as a sleep researcher, as Sparty knows, I've had crippling insomnia problems for a lot of my adult life. I've even been sent to like sleep studies and been measured, and they gave me all the different sleeping pills and the Propovans and Imovans and Stilnox, and none of them can help me sleep. They either have weird side effects or they don't work. But they measured some. It was like 2010 or so. It was a thing at the Karolinska Institute here in Sweden. Because people that have serious sleep problems, a lot of the time they actually do sleep more than they think they sleep. They might think, oh, I only slept like 3 hours last night, when in reality they slept 4 or 5. They were asleep some of the time. They thought they're awake. And after the measurements, like, no, you actually sleep a lot less than you actually think you sleep. Because me being the optimist, there were weeks with the measuring thing on my hand. There was 1 week when I slept 23 hours in a 7-day period. And that's not a lot of sleep. Even for Sparty, that would not be a lot of sleep. However, I spent more than 60 hours in bed, which meant I spent 40 hours that week lying in bed awake, which is a full-time job, lying in bed, not sleeping. I wish somebody had paid me to do that. I could have, but I was too tired to do anything else. I have been taking mirtazapine for that since 2014, which works great, and it was a life changer. I've been sleeping great since then. But when I got corona, it made the mirtazapine work differently. Like, it overworked. Like, I would start getting like twitches and stuff. So that was weird, and that was unfortunate. And as you know, Sparty, I've had some sleeping issues the last couple of years. When I get vaccinated, then it works fine, and then maybe I get a mild case of corona again, and then I get the twitches again from mirtazapine. So the last couple of weeks have been interesting. This past week, I've slept very, very, very badly, worse than I have in the last couple of years. But I'm also the incurable optimist, and mirtazapine is mirtazapine. So I don't, because I'm so protective about sleep, because I've had so many years when I didn't get enough sleep to do life, to function properly. Like, if somebody wants me to do a voiceover or something, and they'll say, great, Thursday morning. Oh, well, Thursday's great. Oh, can you come in at 9? I can, but I can also come in at 2 in the afternoon, because I want to make absolutely certain that I have at least like a 10-hour period. Maybe I'll only sleep for 6 or 7 hours in that 10-hour period, but that I have a 10-hour period for me to at least attempt sleep in that period. And I'm very, very fortunate with the way I've organized my life and lived my life, that I get to choose that. But I don't have to get up at specifically 7 or specifically 8. Even when we're filming, we can film around. If I had a sleepless night, then we can do it later or something. But I know I'm incredibly protective about sleep, because I had sleep problems the last 20 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part with the way that we do this. And I mean, we cover a lot of stuff. We have a lot of work to do. It requires a lot of personal discipline when it comes to being protective about these things, because we do work more than 8 hours a day, and we do work more than 5 days a week. Many weeks, both of us and Astrid and the whole team work 7 days a week. And you have to be protective of those things that keep you sane and keep you alive. And for me, it's my afternoon naps. They're absolutely holy. I will not my 20-minute nap, I really have to have it. Otherwise, I know I'm going to get grumpy. I'm going to start getting depressed, and it's not. So, But thanks for asking, Melissa. It's actually an unusual question, but I understand where you're coming from.
But
now, we have... From Ralph Lewandowski, we have a super chat, and it's more of a message than a question. Moin, and thanks for all the work. Indy, Sparty, Astrid, Anna, all the crew behind the scenes, and chair of Infinite Knowledge. greetings from Hamburg.
All right.
Hamburg is a nice city. We've, I think both Indy and I have had a lot of fun there.
I've had a great deal of fun there. I would not have had a lot of fun there if I was in the summer of 1943. I think I would have thought it was a really sucky place to be. But other than that, yeah, Hamburg's awesome.
It is.
And I don't know.
Somebody's telling me that I should come to Florida because people there drive 85 miles per hour on 70 on highways regularly. Don't worry, cops don't care.
Wait.
Well,
85 miles an hour. Sparty, that's you on local town roads. I mean,
I know. I was going to say
he drives like 120, 130 miles an hour on the Autobahn. I'm with him on these drives, and it's me that's like, hey, there's a Burger King up ahead. Do you want to go? We just stopped at the last Burger King. I don't know. We could have another Burger King, maybe. No, it's having said that,
I have to say something about that though. I mean, I've driven a lot in the States, and I would never ever drive 120 miles an hour on any street in the United States. I wouldn't do it in France, I wouldn't do it in Italy, and I wouldn't do it anywhere. Not only because it's illegal, I mean, that's one thing, but the roads just aren't built for it. I mean, I've taken, I had a rental car that was really cool in France, and I took it out for a spin. And when it was a big car, very powerful muscle car, and I took it out for a spin, and I did kick it up to 235, 240 kilometers an hour, which is 135 miles an hour. And I did that for like about, maybe a kilometer or so. I quickly stopped because the roads are just not done for it. And it's really, really dangerous. The German Autobahn is specifically built, and it's a myth that it's free speed everywhere. And I always look at what the speed limit is, because they put the speed limit in not to mess with you, but because the roads at those portions are not built for high speed, and it can get really, really, really dangerous. So speeding is not a good idea. And what we do in Germany is not speeding. It's under high personal responsibility. We are given the freedom to exceed the recommended speed of 135 kilometers an hour, but it is at our own risk, and it is only in those sections where that is allowed, and those are the only sections in the world where I would do that, except if I'm driving back to save my dog from a very confused situation.
The only time in my life I've ever driven 200 plus kilometers an hour is when, after I'd been stuck for 3 weeks in Bavaria because of Corona, when I was stranded there, at the beginning in March 2020. And you, through somebody else, you knew somebody who had a rental car place, but it was closed because there were no trains or planes or rental cars. But he would have rented me the car. So we had to drive an hour to get to the place so I could rent a car. And then I had to drive to Rostock and then take the truck driver's ferry across to Sweden, and then 3 trains. It took me 36 hours to get back to Stockholm to escape. But the car part was a really nice Mercedes, and I usually drive like anybody else, slightly above the speed limit. That's like my standard thing. But when after I passed Berlin on that 8-hour or 7-hour drive to Rostock, between Berlin and Rostock, it was not, because it was real lockdown. There was not a single human being on the road. So I thought, well, okay, it's time to see what I could do. It didn't start shaking in the car until it got to like 210. I thought when it started shaking, then I'm like, okay, maybe slow down a little bit and stuff. But that's the only time I've ever driven that fast. And that's what, 135, something like that. No, 130 is something like that, right? No, 130 would be 250. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
100 is 320. Okay.
It's exciting to drive fast, but it's very dangerous, and I don't recommend it if you aren't on German roads, and if you should really have a lot of training before you do it. And of course, you need to find a good radio. You need a good radio station too. You need the right radio station when you're driving something like that. Otherwise, it's not cool. You see, look at my hand there in the live stream. You see, you gotta be driving like this. You gotta have a good radio station, and you gotta have fear tattooed on your knuckles. You can draw it on your knuckles just for the temporary drive. That's okay. Yeah, I'm a bit too square for that, Indy. You know me.
Okay, wait. Let's see. This guy also wrote, whatever happened to Oswald Mosely after the war? Was he arrested or executed? What? I don't actually know the full story of what happened to Oswald Mosley after the war. I can tell you what happened to a lot of the British Nazi Party in 1945 and 46. You know Vidal Sassoon? Well, I don't think he's alive any longer. Vidal Sassoon, the hair product, Sassoon and stuff, right? I met Vidal Sassoon once, actually. In 1994, I was just back in New York for like 2 months or so, and I was working as the concierge at the Hotel Elysee. And Vidal Sassoon came, and he was there to meet the owner of the hotel. And I called up and I said, Mr. Quorum, this is Indy at the front desk. Vidal Sassoon is here to see you. Because I said, no, there's someone here to see you. What's your name? Vidal Sassoon. So said hi to Vidal, and he seemed actually pretty cool. And then I learned a bunch more about him, like 15 years later, from a book about British post-war stuff about Mary Quant, Vidal Sassoon, and people that changed British style, right? Like Mary Quant with the hair and stuff, and you had the mini skirts, and Vidal Sassoon changing the hair as well. But Vidal Sassoon, he ended up in hair sort of by accident. He didn't decide he was going to be a hairdresser and stuff. When Vidal Sassoon was in his late teens in London in 1945 and 1946, him and his guys used to go around. They whenever there would be advertisements or anything called for the local brown shirts or the Nazis or whatever they were called to meet, they would go and beat the shit out of them. They went hunting the British Nazi Party, and they pretty effectively ended all public meetings of the British fascists, of the brown shirts, of Oswald Mosley, and that, because it was still legal, but they ended all of that by going meeting to meeting and fighting. Then he went to, of course, to Israel to fight for Israeli independence. Sassoon was Jewish. Which you can guess. I mean, that makes sense, fighting that. But you think of like a guy, the hairdresser guy, you think, okay, he was a hairdresser and stuff. You don't think this is a guy that used to break into Nazi meetings with his fists. But I know that's what happened to Oswald Mosley's followers. I don't know what actually happened to Mosley. Maybe when we cover post-World War II stuff in some format, we can talk about that, right?
Yeah, it's a long story, so let's not get into it now. We will get to that in the episode. Here's one. What's historical place item are on your bucket lists? I'll answer that because I don't want you to take it away from me, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I want to fly in a de Havilland Mosquito.
Yeah, that's absolutely on a bucket list, to fly in a de Havilland Mosquito. And it's achievable, but it's an expensive achievable. The thing about bucket list. Wait, hang on a second. The thing about people say, "What's on my bucket list?" I don't think, "Oh man, I have to do this thing before I die." I don't. So any of those things that I thought of, those would be like career choices or life choices or achievement choices, and I don't have any achievements, like major achievements that I wanted from when I was younger that I have not, at least in some form, done so far. Sure, there's small things like flying a Mosquito, but that's a smaller thing. It's not like, if your main bucket list thing is, I got to go to Paris before I die. That's a stupid bucket list. You can go to Paris tomorrow. Anybody could go to Paris tomorrow.
I agree.
It's your bucket list. Quit your job and go to Paris. Well, then I won't have a job. Well, then don't call it your bucket list, because you could do it tomorrow if you wanted to,
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right, Indy. So we're coming up towards the end of that auction, and if you guys want to join us for Oktoberfest, now is the moment to go over to eBay, follow that link in the pinned comment and in the description, and go bid on that seat, because we'd love to have one of you there.
And I'm not kidding.
I think you're going to love it if you get that seat.
The chicken, beer, the different varieties of free fall and roller coasters. Oh man! And we'll put you in that dirndl. We'll put you in that lederhosen. And lederhosen, anybody that thinks lederhosen don't look cool is stupid, because that's just the way it is. They do.
It is, and everybody wears them at the Oktoberfest. But more than anything, you'll get to hang out with the formidable crew of TimeGhost. You'll get to see Drunk Indy, Drunk Frankie, and maybe even Drunk Sparty. You'll definitely see Drunk Ian, but that's a given.
Yeah, that's a given.
You can come any Tuesday.
The great thing about Drunk Marek? The great thing about Drunk Marek is drunk Marek turns into Father Marek. He's like, no, we all must meet at we're meeting at 9 o'clock after we have you 20 minutes to do free fall. Then we meet there. And, like it turns into Father Santa Claus Marek. It's great. It's great.
He's like me. He drinks very little. So when he drinks, it's got to go somewhere.
But I can't emphasize this enough. Oktoberfest is not what you think it is until you've been to Oktoberfest.
And Oktoberfest is definitely not what you think it is until you've done it together with Indy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
There might be singing. There will be singing.
There will always be singing, even from terrible singers like me.
Sing. Well, Sparty walked through security last time we were there with a dagger because it's a ceremonial dagger. But Sparty's lederhosen are so nice and high end and stuff. The security people are like, no, it's just ornamental. They know, and I have really nice lederhosen. Like when I go to the gentleman's room. The old men, not the old men hanging out in the toilets. Get your mind out of the gutter. But when you walk past, they'll be like, because you could tell somebody. I used to.
Yeah, we both take pride in dressing properly, and I mean, we have a great elf from Austria there as well.
But I would get one piece every year because if I bought that whole outfit, I don't have the money to buy that whole outfit one piece a year after year after year to put together like the nicest high end. Well, other than yours. The nicest high-end, like whole lederhosen outfit, which it's fly. I look fly.
Hey, you look absolutely amazing. That's true. It's true. So we have a super chat question from Nicholas Butman here. Due to my being a higher functioning, I'm curious to have you cover Dr. Asperger and if he had culpability in Nazi war crimes. Shinzo Abe's father, how guilty of war crimes? Yeah, well, I mean, we don't really do that. I've been accused of doing that a couple of times, but that's not how we do it. And if you pay attention, I mean, I'm the one who covers most war crimes. So if you pay attention to how we do it, is that we document what happened. And we don't say, we do in the comments at times, but inside of the comment, we don't go out and say, okay, this here, we're covering it because it's a war crime. We cover what happened, and it's really not our position to decide if it's a war crime inside of the content. A war crime is a very specific thing. A war crime is something that has to be decided by a court. So what we can do is that we can cover things that happened during the war that definitely qualify as war crimes, and if they were tried by a court, they would be probably war crimes. But we look at it from a different perspective. We look at it without starting with the premise that we're going to cover a war crime. We cover the things that impacted the war. In Indy's case, the things that impacted the strategic, tactical, and geopolitical aspects of it. In Astrid's case, what impacted espionage. In Anna's, what happened on the home front. And in my case, and I'm the one with the war crimes, what was done against the principles of humanity, disregarding if it's a crime or not, and if it was prosecuted or not. A lot of the crimes of World War II were never prosecuted. Hence, they are not crimes, because a crime is only something that is being prosecuted and found to have been, in a court of law, under jurisprudence and all of those things. So we don't start with that premise. We don't go out and look, how many war crimes did Shinzo Abe's father commit or something like that. If Shinzo Abe's father turns up in our coverage, well, then you can judge yourself if that would qualify as a war crime or not. If it turns up in my content, it probably is.
Yeah. That's usually the barometer there. So, which series is this guy being talked about in?
Yeah, but we never look for it. That's really important. We don't go out. I did not start this series going, okay, I'm going to show you guys that Winston Churchill committed war crimes, even if people have claimed that that's what I'm doing. No, it's just what happened. If you're upset about what I'm covering, it's because you don't like what happened, not because you don't like what I'm telling you, because I'm telling you what happened.
Are you telling us what happened?
Yeah, we have another message from Correa, a super chat. Thank you for your work. I look forward to the weekly episodes, especially now the war is going great for the Allies. Is it going great for the Allies, Indy?
That's, you'd probably say that even more in September of 43 than you're saying it now in July 43. I mean, the Red Army has pushed the Axis, not just the Germans, but mostly the Germans, back to the Dnieper River, erasing effectively nearly 2 years of gains and hundreds of miles of gains. But is it really going well for them? I mean, it's costing them men in the hundreds of thousands. They're still losing men at a rate 2 or 3 times the rate of the Axis. And sure, it's going well for the Allies in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, taking Ley and Salamaua, sure, and the island hopping in the Solomons. But you're only talking, you've advanced 200 kilometers. It's 5,000 kilometers to Tokyo. They're spending 6 months advancing 200 kilometers. Really going well? Yeah, it's going well for them in Italy. It seems great until the beginning of October, and no spoilers. Then it doesn't seem so well anymore. So that was kind of a spoiler. Yeah, it's going well because the general tide of the war seems to be turned. But don't forget, you're talking tens of thousands of people killed each week. It goes well when it's over.
Yeah, well, or not. I mean, even when it's over, is it really over?
No, as we know. I mean, particularly in the Soviet Union, it's whoever's top dog for the week or 2 weeks. It's not going well for anybody there. There's no way to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
Are these Slack messages for me? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few questions, Indy, if you want to.
Okay. Oh, which one of you used to wear a trench coat walking down the Champs-Elysees with a boombox on your shoulder blasting music? That was me, and it was Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue. Yep, damn right. We're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher, because that's the only song you should be blasting on a ghetto blaster when you're walking down the Champs-Elysees in a trench coat. Am I correct?
Indy, you've had a bit of an echo the entire time, at least on my end. And hearing you sing that right now with a tiny, tiny echo actually made it very musical.
I don't know what I can do about the echo.
No, I just wanted to say.
You're just trying to tell me not to sing. I make money singing, damn it.
Well, Indy, we got 2 minutes and 47 seconds left on the auction, and it looks like we're going to be going to Oktoberfest all on our lonely.
Well, we'll figure out some way to give this ticket away. We'll give it to somebody. We'll give it to somebody,
Well, I'm sure we can find some girl who'd love to join our table, the free seats next to me, Sparty.
There's always that. There's always that.
No, well, I'm sure we can find some fan of presenting global holistic history that would like to go to Oktoberfest. Fans of global real-time interactive historiography that would like to go and have that chicken.
I think so too.
Or Eddie Grant.
Possibly. That could be funny, don't you think?
It's possibly one of those words that's now going to become a
Did
word.
I say possibly?
You said possibly. That's it's because probably is like more than 50%, and possibly is like 10%. So possibly is like 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10 is possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say probably, and I said possibly, and it ended up being possibly. That's good. That's a good new word.
Does anybody out there know Eddie Grant? Because that would be important if we're going to invite Eddie. It'd be a great episode to show us with Eddie Grant at Oktoberfest, like talking about World War II. I'm assuming
that would possibly be a great event.
Oh, I know Eddie Grant knows a great deal about Jamaican and South African history. I know that from his lyrics.
True.
So Sparty, you know what? The thing that you need to do you need to emancipate this is not Eddie Grant. You need to emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
Yes,
None.
because none of them are going to stop at the time, you know.
Have no fear for atomic energy. Emancipate your fear, man. How long can they steal our profits? Always, okay, we can close with this. There was this one morning we were filming, right? And it was like 8 in the morning, and I had to leave at like 9:30, and everything was, I was late. Everybody's in a really bad mood. It's part of, it was like one of the pandemic episodes. We're standing there, and I suddenly got the Bob Marley song in my head, and I just I just sort of sang the first line under my breath. I was like, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. This party like angry turns me. Have no fear for atomic energy. None of them can stop at the time. And we sang the whole of freedom songs there. And I remember Maria, who was doing our social media there, was looking at, when we finished the song, she's like, how do you guys know this? And we're like, because we lived in the 80s. I didn't even listen to Bob Marley, but I know all the words to all the Bob Marley songs because I lived in the 80s. Right?
It was one of my moments of being very angry with my parents was in 1981, and Bob Marley was coming to town, and I, 13 years old, I desperately wanted to go see Bob Marley, and my parents wouldn't let me because people smoke hash there.
Yeah, well.
And yeah. And
right.
The second thing that they did was that they wear espadrillos. Apparently, I don't know why the espadrillos part was so bad, but I can understand the smoking dope bit. But the espadrillos was apparently just as bad as smoking dope.
Did you get to go?
No, I didn't. I was very angry.
What was your
first gotten tickets?
What was your first like grown up like concert that you chose to go to and paid money for yourself to go to?
Wow, there were so many at once. I think it must have been. Oh, I know which one it was. That was only a little bit later, actually. That was the Danish slam metal, country metal band, Disneyland After Dark.
Oh, DID, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Come on,
I saw those when they were like really, really small in Malmo when I was visiting Sweden for the summer, and I was like 14 years old, 15 years old, something, and I went to see DID, and it was amazing. I had no idea what was coming my way, but I became a big fan that day.
They were a good band. Yeah. My first paid grown-up show that I chose to see was the Go-Go's and Flock of Seagulls. Flock of Seagulls were opening for Go-Go's, right? And here's the thing. Flock of Seagulls had their first album out, right? And I loved that album. Forget about Iran. It's a great album. Still listened to some of it recently, like Space Age Love Song, Telecommunications, great songs. So I really wanted to see the Flock of Seagulls. So I'm like 14 or 15 or whatever. And I go to this show. Now, when you're a teenager, any band's great, right? Especially a band that you love is great. How bad did Flock of Seagulls have to be for even 14 or 15-year-old me to think, man, these guys suck, right? Because they were awful live. Having said that, the Go-Go's were fantastic live and turned me into a rabid Go-Go's fan, which I remain to this day. Flock of Seagulls still good on record, but boy, live. No.
Well, I think that's a good moment to end our live stream for today.
Okay.
It's been a great pleasure, and we hope to see you, even if we won't see you at the Oktoberfest. We will see many of you in Normandy and in Munich at the dinner, and we look forward to it immensely. Right, Andy?
Yeah, we do very much. Wait, Sparty, Ian, I'll talk to you guys on Slack in a minute, but I'll say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for this. I enjoy these rambling, babbling, foolish moments. Yeah. That's it. That's what you get, you know. Running on fumes.
Excelsior!
Excelsior!
Thank you, everybody.
All
Goodbye.
right.